1962, workers restoring a ruined monastery beneath the mountains of Romania uncovered a staircase that should not have existed. The monks who once lived there had vanished centuries earlier. No bodies, no records, no explanation, only a warning carved into black stone. Do not descend beneath the ninth gate. At first, the workers believed it was an old burial chamber, until they found the chains. Massive iron chains fused directly into the walls, descending into darkness so deep their lights could not reach the bottom. Then they discovered the sealed door. 13 enormous locks covered its surface, and on each lock a different symbol. None matched any known religion. Not Christian, not pagan, not human. The air around the door was unnaturally cold. One worker later claimed he heard breathing coming from the other side. Another swore the stone was vibrating, like something huge was moving beneath it. 3 days later, the excavation leader disappeared. His final journal entry was recovered beside the staircase. It contained only one sentence: "Hell was never a prison for demons." Then came the recordings. Distorted whispers captured deep underground. Voices repeating the same phrase over and over. The old gods are waking. And when Vatican investigators arrived to seal the site, they discovered something far worse hidden beneath the dust of the ancient door. A second message, one that had been scratched into the stone from the inside. They buried us beneath hell. Long before humanity carved the first symbol into stone, before the first prayer rose into the sky, before heaven opened its gates or hell swallowed the damned, there was only darkness. Not the darkness of night, not the absence of light. Something older, something alive. Ancient texts discovered beneath the ruined monastery described it as the first abyss, a void without time, without stars, without death. A place where existence itself had not yet learned how to breathe. And inside that endless darkness, something waited. The Vatican translators refused to continue after the 4th page. One priest reportedly locked himself inside his quarters and tore out his own eyes after reading the recovered manuscript. Another disappeared somewhere beneath the monastery tunnels and was never found again. But before they vanished, they translated enough. Enough to uncover the first terrible truth. The primordial gods existed before Satan, before Lucifer, before angels, before creation itself. The manuscript claimed they were not created by God. They simply were. Ancient, eternal, hungry. The oldest surviving page described the birth of reality like this. When the universe was still sleeping beneath the waters of the void, the 13 already walked within the dark. No one knows who wrote those words. Carbon dating on the recovered pages became impossible. Every sample returned impossible results. Some fragments appeared older than human civilization itself. Others returned no measurable age at all. The deeper investigators descended beneath the monastery, the stranger the discoveries became. Symbols began appearing on walls where no markings existed before. Black handprints were found inside sealed rooms. Recording equipment captured whispers in languages no expert could identify. And every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., something beneath the earth screamed. At first, the sound resembled distant metal bending underground. Then the recordings changed. The sound became deeper, slower, almost human. One investigator described it as a giant trying to breathe through stone. The monastery itself had been built over ancient catacombs far older than Christianity. Beneath those catacombs were tunnels. And beneath those tunnels, another structure. A buried temple. No entrances. No known architecture. Just smooth black stone descending endlessly beneath the earth. Every wall inside the structure contained carvings of towering figures standing above burning worlds. 13 beings. Always 13. Each shape was different. One possessed hundreds of eyeless faces. Another appeared wrapped in chains thicker than buildings. One image showed a gigantic mouth consuming entire cities while people fled into oceans of darkness. But the final figure had no shape at all. The ancient carvings refused to depict it. Its entire section had been violently scratched apart, as though whoever created the temple was terrified to even carve its image. The manuscript referred to them collectively as the ones beneath. According to the translated texts, the primordial gods did not rule through kingdoms or worship. They ruled through fear. Where they moved, reality collapsed. Stars died. Oceans blackened. Living creatures lost their minds simply by witnessing them. The text described entire worlds swallowed by silence after hearing the voice of the fourth god. Another passage claimed the seventh god slept beneath an endless black sea where dead civilizations drifted forever in darkness. And the 13th was never described directly, only warned about. The deeper the investigators studied the texts, the more disturbing patterns emerged. Many ancient religions appeared connected. Sumerian myths, forgotten Roman cults, ancient cave symbols found beneath Antarctica. Even early biblical writings contained hidden references to beings imprisoned beneath creation. One passage removed from a medieval manuscript read, "And the Lord sealed beneath the earth those things which came before the morning stars." Nobody knew what it meant, until the excavation team reached the lower chamber. The staircase beneath the monastery continued for nearly 2 miles underground. The air became freezing. Their lights began malfunctioning. Compasses spun endlessly. Then they discovered the door. Not the first sealed door. Another one, far larger. The chamber surrounding it was enormous, larger than a cathedral. Ancient chains stretched across the walls and disappeared into darkness above. Some links were the size of human bodies. The floor was covered in strange ash-like dust. Analysis later revealed it contained traces of human bone, thousands of years old. Directly in front of the massive door stood 13 stone pillars. Each pillar contained a different symbol, and every symbol matched the carvings found throughout the buried temple. The investigators initially believed it was ceremonial, until they noticed the scratches. Long claw marks covered the inside surface of the stone door. Not outside, inside, as if something had tried to escape. One cameraman moved closer to inspect the markings. His footage was later recovered. The final seconds showed him shining his flashlight across the door before suddenly freezing. Then his breathing changed. Slow, uneven, terrified. A voice behind the camera whispered, "Something is moving down there." The footage abruptly cuts to static. The cameraman was never seen again. Search teams found only the flashlight, still warm, still recording. And somewhere within the distorted audio, investigators heard another sound. Breathing. Massive. Ancient. Not human. After the disappearance, the Vatican attempted to shut down the excavation entirely. But the surviving researchers refused. They believed they were uncovering the greatest secret in human history. They were wrong. What they uncovered was a warning, one hidden beneath civilization since the beginning of time. The recovered manuscripts claimed the primordial gods once ruled an age before creation itself stabilized. An age where reality constantly shifted. Mountains moved like living things. Oceans opened beneath the sky. Time fractured. Death did not exist correctly. The text described entire species trapped between life and extinction for eternity. And above all things, the 13 watched, waiting, feeding, learning. Then something changed. According to the oldest surviving fragment, the light descended into the abyss. The next pages were badly damaged. Burn marks covered most of the writing, but scattered lines remained readable, enough to describe a war unlike anything humanity could imagine. Not a war between nations, not even between heaven and hell. A war between existence itself and the things beneath it. The manuscript claimed the first angels were created for one purpose: to contain the primordial gods, not destroy them, contain them, because they could not die. The texts repeatedly emphasized the same terrifying truth. What was born before creation cannot be destroyed by creation. The investigators initially dismissed the writings as mythology, until the deaths began. One translator suffered violent seizures after studying the symbols from the lower chamber. Before dying, he repeatedly screamed the same phrase, "They remember us." Another researcher vanished from inside a locked security room. Cameras showed him staring at the wall for nearly 6 straight hours. Then at exactly 3:13 a.m., the lights failed. When power returned 3 seconds later, he was gone. But something else appeared on the wall behind him. A fresh symbol, painted in black. The symbol matched the carving associated with the first god, he who watches through shadows. Panic spread through the excavation team. Several members demanded they abandon the site immediately. Others argued the fear itself proved the manuscripts were working psychologically. Ancient suggestion. Mass hysteria. Religious paranoia. That explanation lasted 3 more nights. Then the chanting began. Security microphones hidden throughout the lower tunnels captured distant voices beneath the structure. At first, investigators believed homeless trespassers had entered the catacombs. Search teams were sent underground. They found nothing. No people. No footprints. No source. But the chanting continued every night. Always deeper below the earth. Always in the same rhythm. The audio was enhanced repeatedly. What experts finally heard terrified them. The voices were not speaking Latin, or Romanian, or any known language. The sounds did not belong to human speech patterns at all. Yet one phrase eventually became clear. Over and over, the voices repeated the same words. The seals are breaking. 3 days later, the first seal cracked. Nobody saw it happen. Investigators simply arrived in the lower chamber and found one of the 13 stone pillars split directly down the center. The air inside the chamber had changed. Warmer now, almost wet, and beneath the massive stone door, something black slowly leaked upward through the cracks. Not liquid, not oil, something thicker, alive. One investigator touched it accidentally. He began screaming instantly. Witnesses claimed the black substance moved beneath his skin like insects crawling through veins. He died less than an hour later. But before his death, he whispered something investigators tried desperately to hide from the public. His final words were, "They are not sleeping anymore." Nobody knew when the nightmares truly began. Some believed it started after the first seal cracked beneath the monastery. Others claimed the darkness had always been there, waiting, watching. 3 days after the death of the excavation investigator, Vatican officials sealed the lower chamber and forbade anyone from entering alone. It changed nothing, because whatever existed beneath the monastery was no longer staying below. The first reports came from the night guards. At exactly 3:13 a.m., multiple guards stationed near the underground tunnels claimed the shadows inside the corridors began moving unnaturally. Not from flickering lights, not from human movement. The darkness itself shifted across the walls. One guard abandoned his post after seeing what he described as a face forming inside the shadows. He resigned the next morning. 2 days later, he disappeared. His apartment was found completely dark. Every bulb shattered, every window covered, and scratched repeatedly across the walls were the words, "It sees me." The Vatican initially blamed stress and psychological contamination caused by the excavation, until the recordings surfaced. A maintenance camera positioned near the lower staircase captured something impossible during the early hours of the morning. At first, the footage appeared normal. Empty corridor, stone walls, flickering lights. Then the shadows changed. Slowly, the darkness near the ceiling began stretching downward like liquid crawling across stone. The camera distorted violently. Static flooded the screen. And for a single frame, something appeared. An enormous eye, unblinking, buried inside the dark. The footage lasted only 17 seconds before cutting completely black. But it was enough, because everyone who viewed the original recording reported the same symptoms afterward. Insomnia, migraines, paranoia, an unbearable sensation of being watched from dark corners. Several researchers refused to sleep with lights off ever again. One technician claimed shadows in his room moved seconds before he did. Another swore he woke during the night to find dozens of eyes staring at him from inside his ceiling. Then came Father Alaric. Unlike the others, Father Alaric did not believe in curses or ancient gods. He believed fear was spreading through the excavation team like a disease. So he volunteered to spend an entire night alone inside the lower chamber beneath the monastery. His audio recorder was recovered the following morning. The recording begins calmly. Footsteps, breathing, the sound of papers moving. Then Father Alaric speaks. There is nothing here except darkness and fear. For several minutes, nothing unusual happens. Then, a sound echoes somewhere inside the chamber. A low metallic groan, like giant chains dragging across stone. Father Alaric stops speaking. The recorder captures his footsteps moving slowly through the room. Then silence. Nearly a full minute passes before he whispers, "Who's there?" No response. Only distant breathing. Heavy, slow, inhuman. Father Alaric begins praying under his breath. The audio crackles violently. And then, another voice answers him from inside the darkness. Not loud, not monstrous, almost calm. "I see you, Father Alaric screams. The recorder falls. Something massive moves somewhere beyond the reach of the microphone. Then the audio ends. Search teams found the chamber empty the next morning. Father Alaric was gone, but his journal remained beside the sealed door. Most pages were unreadable, covered in frantic writing and black ink stains. Only one sentence appeared clearly across the final page. The shadows are not empty. After his disappearance, panic spread rapidly through the monastery. Workers began refusing night shifts. Several guards quit entirely. Some claimed they heard whispering beneath the floors after midnight. Others reported seeing tall figures standing motionless at the ends of dark hallways before vanishing seconds later. Then the deaths began. A translator working on the ancient manuscript was found dead inside his hotel room. No signs of forced entry. No wounds. But investigators noticed something horrifying. Every mirror inside the room had been turned toward the wall. And carved into the wooden floor beneath the bed were 13 symbols matching the seals beneath the monastery. Another researcher disappeared while driving home from the excavation site. Police later found his vehicle abandoned beside a forest road. The engine was still running. The driver's door stood open, and surrounding the car, hundreds of footprints circled endlessly in the mud. None led away. Then came the photographs. During a routine inspection of the lower chamber, a Vatican investigator captured several images near the cracked seal. At first, the photos appeared normal, until someone adjusted the brightness. Standing inside the shadows behind the stone pillars was a figure. Tall, thin, its body impossible to fully see, but its face contained dozens of eyes. Human eyes, animal eyes, some open, some blinking, some far too large to belong to anything alive. The Vatican immediately confiscated the images, but not before several analysts studied them. Within days, every analyst began suffering identical symptoms: sleep paralysis, hallucinations, severe nosebleeds, an obsessive fear of darkness. One man reportedly destroyed every light inside his home before clawing at his own eyes while screaming, "Make it stop watching me." Doctors sedated him shortly afterward. He never spoke again. The ancient manuscripts eventually revealed the true name of the entity beneath the monastery: the first god, he who watches through shadows. According to the texts, it was not the strongest of the primordial gods. It did not rule through destruction. It ruled through observation. The manuscript described it as the eye within the abyss before the birth of stars. Ancient civilizations believed darkness itself connected to the first god, that every shadow on earth acted like an open doorway through which it could see, and the more aware a person became of its existence, the closer it moved toward them. That was why the symbols mattered, why the recordings spread fear, why knowledge itself became dangerous. One recovered text carried a warning written in a language older than recorded history. Once it sees you, it never looks away. The lower chamber beneath the monastery continued changing. The cracked seal widened further every night. Black liquid leaked slowly from beneath the massive stone door. The temperature underground rose unnaturally warm. And every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., the whispers returned. Louder now. Hundreds of voices speaking together beneath the earth. Not screaming, not chanting, waiting, watching. Then finally, one sentence became clear. A sentence repeated over and over from beneath the sealed door. Open the eyes. Nobody expected water beneath the chamber. The monastery stood on solid mountain rock. Every geological survey confirmed the same thing. Miles of stone beneath the excavation site. No underground rivers. No caverns large enough to hold water. Nothing. But 3 nights after the whispers changed, investigators began hearing waves. At first the sound was faint. Soft movement echoing somewhere below the sealed door. Most assumed it was wind moving through lower tunnels. Until one of the audio technicians enhanced the recordings. The room fell silent as the sound played through the speakers. It was not wind. It was an ocean. Slow waves. Massive waves. Moving somewhere deep beneath the earth. The realization terrified everyone inside the monastery, because the recordings were captured nearly 2 miles underground. Father Nicodemus was the first to suggest stopping the excavation completely. Unlike the others, he had spent years studying forbidden religious texts hidden inside Vatican archives. And according to him, The sound beneath the chamber matched descriptions found in ancient writings humanity was never supposed to read. One passage in particular disturbed him deeply. A text recovered from destroyed Byzantine records described the black waters beneath hell where the first gods sleep in chains. Nobody wanted to believe it. But the deeper the team descended beneath the monastery, the more impossible things became. The cracked seal continued widening. And now, cold black moisture covered the stone floor around the door every morning. Not water. Something thicker. Dark. Viscous. The substance smelled like rotting metal and salt. Samples brought to the surface evaporated within hours. But while underground, the liquid moved. Several researchers reported seeing it slowly crawl across the floor against gravity, like it was alive. Then came the tremors. Not earthquakes. Something else. The monastery began shaking every night shortly after 3:13 a.m. Small vibrations at first, then stronger. Dust fell from ceilings. Ancient walls cracked. One worker swore he heard giant chains moving somewhere far below the earth during the tremors. Another claimed he heard screaming underwater. The Vatican responded by sending a specialized excavation team into the lower tunnels beneath the sealed chamber. Their goal was simple: find the source of the sound. 7 men descended beneath the monastery. Only 4 returned, and none of them were ever the same again. The surviving members refused interviews afterward. 2 were transferred immediately to psychiatric facilities owned by the church. The third disappeared 6 days later. Only one investigator remained stable enough to speak. His name was Elias Varga. The official recording of his testimony was sealed permanently by Vatican order, but fragments eventually leaked online years later. The recording begins with heavy breathing, long silence. Then Elias finally speaks. There's something beneath the monastery. Another voice asks him to explain. Elias remains silent for nearly 20 seconds before answering. It isn't a cave. His breathing becomes shaky, uneven, terrified. It's an ocean. The room reportedly went silent after he said those words. Elias described descending through ancient tunnels beneath the lower chamber for nearly 3 hours. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the environment became. The stone walls grew smooth, black, wet. Ancient symbols covered every surface, and everywhere they looked, there were chains. Gigantic chains disappearing downward into darkness. Some links were larger than human bodies. According to Elias, the tunnels eventually opened into something impossible. A shoreline, miles beneath the earth. An endless black ocean stretching beyond the reach of their lights. No visible ceiling. No visible end. Just darkness and water. The investigators initially believed exhaustion or oxygen deprivation was causing hallucinations, until they saw the waves. The ocean was moving, slowly, breathing almost. Elias described the sound as a living thing asleep beneath the water. One member of the team attempted to measure the depth near the shore using industrial sonar equipment. The results made no sense. The sonar never reached bottom. Even after several minutes, it simply continued descending into darkness. Then the device stopped transmitting entirely. Moments later, something moved beneath the water. At first they thought it was a wave. Then one investigator aimed a floodlight toward the movement, and the ocean opened its eyes. Elias reportedly began crying during this part of the testimony. His hands shook uncontrollably. The recording captured him whispering repeatedly, "It was looking at us." According to the surviving investigators, something enormous existed beneath the Black Sea. Something so massive they could not comprehend its full shape. Only fragments appeared above the water. Dark skin, movement, and eyes. Hundreds of enormous eyes slowly opening beneath the waves. One investigator panicked and ran. The others followed immediately. But before they escaped, they heard something behind them. Chains breaking. The sound echoed across the underground ocean like thunder. The surviving team reached the monastery nearly 5 hours later. One member had vanished during the escape. Another suffered complete psychological collapse shortly afterward. He repeatedly screamed the same sentence before sedatives were administered. Hell was built on top of it. The Vatican sealed every entrance leading toward the underground shoreline immediately after the expedition. But it was already too late, because the dreams had started. Every person involved in the excavation began reporting identical nightmares. An endless black ocean beneath the earth. Whispers rising from the water. Massive shapes moving below the surface. And something calling their names from the dark. Some victims woke covered in salt water despite sleeping far from the monastery. Others claimed they heard waves inside their walls at night. One guard stationed near the lower chamber disappeared after reporting water leaking from beneath his bedroom door. The room was found flooded the next morning, but there was no source of the water, only black liquid covering the floor, and wet footprints leading toward the hallway. The footprints stopped abruptly halfway down the corridor, as if whoever made them had simply vanished. Then came the recordings. Late one night, security microphones near the sealed chamber captured a new sound beneath the monastery. Not whispers, not chanting, singing. Oh, ancient. Dozens of voices echoing together from somewhere deep below the earth. Experts analyzing the audio later discovered something horrifying. The sound did not resemble human vocal patterns. The tones shifted unnaturally, like several creatures speaking through the same throat. And hidden beneath the singing, another sound emerged. Movement underwater. Huge movement. The ocean below hell was waking up. Ancient manuscripts recovered from the buried temple soon revealed more about the Black Sea beneath the earth. According to the texts, the primordial gods were not buried individually. Several of them slept beneath the underground ocean together, chained beneath reality itself, guarded by hell above them. One passage described the sea as the prison beneath the prison. Another warned, when the waters rise, the chains weaken. Nobody understood what that meant, until seawater began appearing inside the monastery. Black moisture leaked through stone walls. Hallways flooded overnight. Workers heard waves behind solid rock. And every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., the tremors returned. Stronger now. Violent enough to crack the monastery foundation. Then something happened that terrified even the Vatican officials overseeing the excavation. The water level inside the lower chamber began rising. Slowly at first. Thin streams flowing beneath the sealed door. Then more. Black seawater flooded across the stone floor. And mixed within the water were dead things. Fish unlike any species ever recorded. Blind creatures with transparent flesh. Long skeletal bodies. Too many teeth. Some were still moving when discovered. One creature reportedly survived nearly 4 hours outside water before dying. During examination, researchers found something inside its stomach. Human teeth. The Vatican attempted to destroy every specimen immediately, but panic had already spread throughout the monastery. Several workers fled during the night. Others locked themselves inside their rooms praying. One priest reportedly tried setting fire to the lower tunnels before being restrained by guards. He kept screaming, "The sea is rising." Then came the final expedition. Against every warning, Vatican officials sent another team beneath the monastery to confirm the condition of the underground ocean. 12 men descended. Only one returned. His name was Matteo Serra. When rescuers found him crawling through the upper tunnels nearly 2 days later, he was covered in black seawater. Hypothermic. Delirious. Barely alive. His eyes were bleeding, and he would not stop whispering. Over and over, the same sentence. "The chains are breaking." Doctors later attempted to question him about what happened beneath the earth. At first, Matteo refused to speak. Then finally, he described what they saw at the shoreline. The ocean was no longer calm. Something beneath the water was rising. The chains stretched upward into darkness, pulling against something enormous below the surface. And everywhere across the Black Sea, giant shapes were beginning to move underwater. Not one creature. Many. The primordial gods were waking. But the most horrifying part came last. According to Matteo, one of the entities had already reached the shore. He described seeing a colossal figure standing motionless in the darkness beyond the water. Too large to fully see. Its body wrapped in chains. Its eyes glowing beneath the void. Watching them. Waiting. Then Matteo whispered the final words investigators recorded before he suffered total psychological collapse. Words the Vatican buried immediately. Words never meant to be heard by the public. "There is no hell beneath us." The first village disappeared quietly. No screams. No fires. No bodies. Just silence. The settlement stood less than 30 miles from the monastery. Small. Isolated. Fewer than 200 residents. When authorities finally entered the village after losing contact for nearly 4 days, they found dinner tables still prepared. Food remained inside ovens. Lights still worked. Cars sat untouched in driveways. But every person was gone. Not missing. Gone. As if the entire population had vanished in the middle of ordinary life. The investigation lasted less than a day before Vatican officials arrived and sealed the area completely. That alone terrified local authorities. But what truly disturbed investigators were the photographs found inside the abandoned homes. Every family picture inside the village had changed. Faces were missing. Not scratched out. Not burned. Erased. Entire people had vanished from the images completely, leaving only empty spaces beside relatives who no longer seemed to remember them. One officer reportedly suffered a panic attack after recognizing his own brother in a recovered village photograph. The problem was, he never had a brother. At least that was what he believed before seeing the image. The deeper investigators examined the abandoned village, the more disturbing the evidence became. Family journals mentioned names that no longer existed in government records. Birth certificates referenced children nobody remembered. Entire bedrooms appeared occupied by people history itself had forgotten. And written repeatedly across several walls were the same words. He is hungry. The Vatican immediately connected the disappearances to the underground ocean beneath the monastery. Because 3 nights earlier, the second seal had broken. Witnesses inside the lower chamber described hearing an enormous cracking sound echo beneath the earth shortly before every light inside the monastery failed simultaneously. Then came the screaming. Not human screams. Something deeper. Ancient. A sound like thousands of voices crying out from beneath the ocean below hell. After that night, the whispers changed again. No longer repeating. Open the eyes. Now they said something worse. Feed him. Father Nicodemus was the first to identify the entity connected to the disappearances. Ancient texts recovered from beneath the monastery referred to it as the fifth god, the devourer, the mouth without end. Unlike the Watcher, this primordial god did not spread through shadows or fear. It consumed, not flesh, not blood, existence itself. The manuscripts described civilizations erased entirely after encountering it. Not destroyed, forgotten. Its hunger extended beyond death, beyond memory, beyond reality. One recovered passage read, "Where the mouth feeds, even history starves." At first, researchers dismissed the wording as symbolic mythology, until the records started changing. A Vatican archivist reviewing monastery files noticed entire documents disappearing overnight. Photographs altered themselves. Recorded names vanished from databases. Audio tapes developed missing voices. One researcher discovered an expedition report describing 12 investigators entering the underground tunnels. But security footage clearly showed 13 people descending. Nobody could identify the extra man. His face appeared blurred in every frame, and no records of his existence remained anywhere afterward. Then the dreams began spreading beyond the monastery. Across nearby towns, people started reporting identical nightmares. A gigantic mouth beneath the earth, breathing, waiting, hungry. Some victims described endless rows of teeth stretching across darkness larger than cities. Others claimed they heard chewing sounds beneath their homes during the night. Children woke screaming about voices inside the walls begging to be remembered. One mother murdered her entire family after becoming convinced something beneath the ground was eating their names. Before taking her own life, she wrote a final sentence across the kitchen wall in blood. "Heidi eats the dead first." Panic spread quietly through surrounding regions. Disappearances increased. Entire roads became abandoned overnight. Travelers vanished between towns. Emergency calls described impossible things moving beneath forests after dark. One truck driver managed to contact authorities moments before disappearing. His recording was later leaked online. Heavy breathing fills the audio. Rain. Engine noise. Then his voice trembling violently. Something's following the road. Dispatch asks him to calm down. The driver begins crying. There's a mouth in the trees. Metal suddenly groans somewhere outside the truck. The driver screams. Then another sound emerges through the recording. Chewing. Slow. Wet. Massive. The call disconnects. Police later discovered the truck abandoned beside the highway. No driver. No blood. But the vehicle itself appeared partially consumed. The metal around the cabin looked melted inward like flesh torn apart by enormous teeth. Investigators soon uncovered ancient references to the mouth without end hidden across multiple civilizations. A forgotten Mesopotamian tablet described the god beneath the earth that swallowed kingdoms whole. Ancient South American cave paintings depicted giant mouths opening beneath villages while human figures fell screaming into darkness. Even medieval Europe carried distorted legends of entire towns disappearing overnight without explanation. Always the same pattern: vanishing, forgetting, erasure. The god of hunger did not merely kill, it removed, and the longer it fed, the weaker reality became around it. That was why the village terrified the Vatican, because investigators discovered something impossible there. The abandoned homes showed evidence of far more residents than official records claimed. Extra bedrooms, additional family belongings, photographs containing people nobody remembered. It was as if the entity had already begun consuming parts of the village's existence before the population vanished completely. One investigator reportedly discovered childhood memories of a sister erased from his own life. He later found old photographs proving she once existed, but every image containing her face had become distorted, stretched, almost eaten away. The man disappeared 3 days later. Afterward, no records of him remained inside Vatican archives. Only one audio file survived. A terrified voice whispering repeatedly, "Don't let it take your name." Meanwhile, beneath the monastery, the ocean continued rising. Black seawater flooded deeper into the tunnels every night. Dead sea creatures washed ashore beneath the underground cavern, and the chains beneath the water kept moving. Witnesses described hearing enormous impacts echo across the abyss below hell, as if something gigantic was pulling against its restraints. Then came the feeding pit. During a structural collapse inside one of the lower tunnels, investigators uncovered another chamber hidden beneath layers of ancient stone. The room was circular, miles wide, and at its center was a hole. Not a natural pit, a shaft descending endlessly downward into darkness. The walls surrounding it were covered in human bones fused directly into black rock. Millions of them, ancient skeletons stretching as far as lights could reach. Some appeared twisted together in expressions of terror. Others looked partially melted into the stone itself. But the most horrifying discovery waited near the edge. Massive teeth, buried within the rock surrounding the pit. Not carved, real. Each tooth larger than a human body. Father Nicodemus reportedly collapsed after seeing them, because the ancient manuscripts described this exact place. The feeding mouth. According to the texts, ancient civilizations once sacrificed entire populations to keep the fifth god dormant beneath the abyss. Not out of worship, out of fear. One passage read, "Better one city forgotten than the world consumed." The Vatican ordered the chamber sealed immediately, but the pit did not remain quiet. At night, investigators heard breathing rising from its depths. Wet chewing sounds echoed upward through the darkness, and sometimes, voices, human voices, begging for help from somewhere impossibly deep below. One rescue team attempted lowering audio equipment into the shaft. The cable descended for nearly 2 hours before suddenly stopping. Then something pulled it downward violently. The equipment was recovered later, covered in saliva-like black fluid, but part of the audio survived. At first, only static could be heard, then distant screaming. Thousands of voices crying together from the darkness below, and beneath them, chewing, massive chewing, followed by a single sentence spoken in dozens of overlapping human voices. "He remembers hunger." The psychological collapse among the excavation team worsened rapidly afterward. Researchers forgot names of co-workers they had known for years. Entire conversations vanished from memory. One priest suddenly became unable to remember Christianity itself. He reportedly stared at a crucifix for nearly an hour before whispering, "Who is that?" Then came the worst incident yet. A nearby town simply disappeared from maps. Not physically. The buildings remained. The roads remained. But digital systems no longer recognized the location. Government archives lost all records connected to it. Satellite data became corrupted. Even locals driving nearby claimed they suddenly forgot how to reach the town despite living there their entire lives. The god of hunger was feeding faster now, and every feeding weakened reality further. Father Nicodemus finally revealed the truth hidden within the oldest manuscripts. The primordial gods beneath hell were never imprisoned merely because they were evil. They represented forces capable of unmaking existence itself. The Watcher consumed perception. The fifth god consumed memory, identity, and reality. And according to the text, its hunger was endless. One final passage discovered beneath the monastery terrified even the Vatican officials overseeing the excavation. The ancient words read, "When the mouth awakens fully, the world itself will be forgotten." Then the third seal broke. The tremor nearly destroyed the monastery. Walls collapsed, tunnels flooded, and somewhere far below the earth, something enormous roared beneath the underground ocean. Not anger, not pain, hunger, pure endless hunger. That same night, security cameras inside the lower chamber captured movement near the shoreline of the Black Sea beneath Hell. A gigantic shape rising slowly from the water, too massive for the cameras to fully capture. But investigators saw enough. Rows of colossal teeth emerging from darkness, opening, breathing, hungry. Then the recording ended with the final message ever recovered from the lower tunnels. A whisper spoken directly into the microphone by an unknown voice. It has started feeding. The Vatican never called it a discovery. They called it a breach in understanding. Because what was uncovered beneath the monastery was no longer just a prison. It was evidence of a war. A war older than creation, older than hell, older than the concept of God itself. It began with a sound, not from the underground ocean, not from the feeding pit, but from above. For the first time since the excavation began, the upper chamber beneath the monastery went silent. The whispers stopped. The breathing from the lower tunnels disappeared. Even the black water ceased moving. Everything froze. Then, at exactly 3:13 a.m., every piece of recording equipment inside the monastery simultaneously recorded the same thing. A single tone, like a bell ringing across infinite distance. Then another, and another. 13 in total. After the 13th sound, the air changed. Father Nicodemus described it in his final surviving notes as if something above us finally noticed what was beneath us. The next morning, the sky above the monastery appeared wrong. Clouds did not move naturally. They spiraled, like something was stirring beyond atmosphere. Birds refused to fly over the region. Airplanes diverted without explanation. Satellite imagery of the area was classified within hours. But fragments leaked. And what they showed terrified even scientists who refused to believe the excavation's religious implications. A structure above the Earth's atmosphere. Massive, unidentified, moving. Then came the recovered manuscript known only as the upper fragment. Unlike the lower texts, it was not written in ink. It was written in burn marks across stone recovered from deep within the sealed chamber. Its translation took months, and even then parts were missing. But the message was clear. There was a war. Not beneath hell. Not within it. Above it. Before humanity. Before Earth. Before even the formation of stars. The first war was not fought between good and evil. It was fought between containment and existence. According to the fragment, the primordial gods were not born imprisoned. They were hunted. By beings that came from what the texts called the upper light. Not angels. Not gods. Something else. Something that existed before morality. The watchers above creation. The manuscript described them as those who built reality to trap what reality could not hold. The war began when the 13 awakened for the first time inside the void. Not beneath Earth. Not beneath hell. But beneath existence itself. They did not invade creation. They tore into it. And reality fractured for the first time. Stars collapsed before they were fully formed. Dimensions folded into each other like burning paper. Time became unstable. And something responded. The upper light descended. Not in ships. Not in forms. But as laws. Rules imposed onto existence itself. Gravity. Time. Death. Meaning. All of it became weapons. Father Nicodemus wrote, "Heaven was not a kingdom. It was a weapon constructed to stop the 13 from rewriting reality. But it failed. The war lasted longer than time could measure. And in the end, nothing truly won. Instead, containment was built. The earth, the underground ocean, the seals. All of it was not punishment. It was architecture. A prison layered across existence. Built to separate the 13 from reality itself. But something went wrong. One of them remained partially unsealed. The first God. The Watcher. And through it, the prison began to weaken. The monastery was never the origin of the breach. It was a pressure point. a thin layer between containment and collapse. When the fourth seal cracked beneath the lower chamber, something changed in the upper world. Not physically, structurally. Reality itself began to loosen. People across the region reported seeing things in the sky that should not exist. Shapes behind clouds, eyes blinking through storms, and during thunderstorms, voices. Not thunder, voices, speaking in synchronized patterns. The Vatican attempted to suppress all data, but one fragment survived from a military satellite feed. It showed something emerging above Earth's atmosphere, a silhouette spanning thousands of kilometers, surrounded by broken light, and chained. Then the feed cut. Inside the monastery, panic escalated, because the lower chamber began reacting to what was happening above. The black water beneath hell started rising violently. The chains beneath the ocean began shaking for the first time in recorded history, and the feeding pit began to collapse inward, as if something beneath it was pulling everything downward. Father Nicodemus wrote one final entry before disappearing. The war never ended. It only changed direction. Then came the sound. Not from above, not from below, but from everywhere at once. A single synchronized cracking noise, like reality itself breaking under pressure. The monastery lights exploded simultaneously. Emergency systems failed, and every recording device captured the same final image. The sky above the monastery splitting open like fractured glass, and something inside it watching back. Dozens of eyes, opening across the sky, mirroring the darkness beneath the earth. The watcher below, and something watching from above, staring at each other through collapsing reality. Then the message appeared in all remaining recordings. Not spoken, not transmitted, but understood directly by everyone who heard it. A single truth. The war is not over. It is unfinished. After that night, the monastery was declared non-existent by official Vatican records. Maps changed, coordinates erased, satellite imagery replaced with blank terrain. But survivors from nearby regions still report hearing distant ringing sounds at exactly 3:13 a.m. 13 bells, from somewhere beneath the earth, and sometimes from above it. No one agreed on the exact moment reality stopped behaving normally. Some said it began when the monastery vanished from official records. Others insisted it started the moment the ocean beneath hell rose above containment. But the surviving investigators all agreed on one thing. The final seal was not breaking. It was being acknowledged. And once something like that is acknowledged, it can no longer remain hidden. 3 weeks after the events beneath the underground ocean, a new site appeared on Vatican classified maps. No coordinates, no origin point, just a designation. Final containment site, Layer 0. It was not underground anymore. Not beneath Earth. Not beneath hell. It existed in a space that had no agreed definition. A place where depth and height no longer mattered. Father Lucian was the only surviving member of the original excavation team allowed to view the updated reports. He requested silence before reading them. He was granted it. He did not last long. According to his final testimony, the Vatican brought him into a chamber that contained no doors, no windows, and no measurable distance between walls. Inside that chamber was a single object, a slab of stone, 13 meters wide, covered in the same symbols found beneath the monastery. But this time, the symbols were moving, not carved, alive, shifting across the surface like insects under skin. The Vatican scholars called it the final seal interface, but Father Lucian called it something else. A lock that had learned it was being watched. The moment he entered the chamber, the lights dimmed, not due to power failure, but because the room itself seemed to lose certainty. He described the sensation as standing inside a thought that was not fully formed. Then the stone spoke, not audibly, directly into perception. Why do you count us? Every observer in the chamber collapsed simultaneously, except Father Lucian. He was the only one who remained conscious long enough to hear the second message. We were not bound. We were described. The Vatican immediately sealed the chamber after that incident. But sealing something that no longer obeys physical structure is only symbolic. And symbols no longer mattered. Because across the world, changes began. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Maps began shifting overnight. Rivers changed direction on satellite imagery. Entire mountain ranges appeared in locations where oceans previously existed, and in every recorded system, a single anomaly emerged, a repeating absence, a missing coordinate that could not be tracked, measured, or defined, but always felt, as if something enormous was occupying a space reality refused to admit existed. Inside the Vatican archives, researchers discovered something buried deeper than the monastery records, older than Christianity, older than Rome, older than written language itself. A set of fragmented inscriptions carved into unknown material that did not match any geological classification. The translation team called it pre-language. It was not meant to be read, only experienced. The inscriptions described the final seal not as protection, but as restraint. Not restraint of gods, but restraint of understanding. Because once understood, it would stop functioning. One fragment read, "What is known cannot remain contained." After that discovery, Vatican oversight requested immediate termination of all related research. But it was already too late, because the seal chamber had begun to respond. At exactly 3:13 a.m., every monitoring device connected to final containment site, Layer 0, activated simultaneously. Even devices that were disconnected from power. Even devices that no longer existed physically. What they recorded was not sound at first, but presence. A pressure change across reality itself. Then came movement. Something vast pressing upward from beneath conceptual space. Not digging. Not breaking. Approaching. Father Lucian, now under Vatican observation, wrote one final note before his disappearance. The handwriting was uneven, as if written while standing inside constant vibration. It is not trying to escape. It is trying to arrive. 3 hours later, all communication with the chamber was lost. Security teams sent to investigate reported no physical damage upon arrival. The chamber was intact. The seal was intact. Everything appeared normal, until they noticed the symbols. They were no longer moving. They were looking outward. Every single symbol had rotated to face the observers. Then the chamber lights went out. Not suddenly, gradually, as if darkness itself was being introduced into the room. Emergency recordings captured the final minutes. Voices of the security team echoing confusion. Then silence. Then breathing. Close. All around them. And finally, a single phrase repeated from every direction at once. Not spoken. Not transmitted. Understood. The seal was never a door. It was a name we stopped saying. After that moment, every member of the team vanished from all tracking systems. No bodies were recovered. No evidence remained. But the chamber remained active. Even now. Because satellite systems that attempt to observe the location still register a distortion. A missing piece of space. A gap in reality that refuses correction. And beneath it, something continues pressing upward. Not with force, but with certainty. As if it knows the final seal was never meant to hold. Only delay recognition. And now recognition has already happened. Far beneath everything, beyond hell, beyond the ocean, beyond containment. The last message ever decoded from the Vatican archive was recovered. It was not written in any known script. It was interpreted through pattern recognition of reality distortion. The meaning was simple and absolute. We were never locked in. You were locked out. There was no announcement, no warning, no final signal from the Vatican. One day the world simply stopped making sense in small ways, before collapsing in large ones. It began with the sky. People across multiple continents reported the same phenomenon at the same hour. The clouds did not drift. They paused, as if the atmosphere itself had forgotten how to move. Birds froze mid-flight and then suddenly changed direction, flying upward instead of forward. And every compass on Earth began pointing downward. Not north, not magnetic north, down, towards something no one could locate, but everyone could feel. Beneath everything, deep beneath reality itself. The first rupture happened without sound. A region of the Atlantic Ocean simply turned black on satellite imaging. Not storm, not pollution, absence, as if color had been removed from the water. Within 12 hours, 3 fishing vessels vanished inside that zone without distress calls. Their final transmissions were identical. The water is looking back. Then came the seismic activity, but not earthquakes, more like movement from below. as if something enormous was shifting its position after an eternity of stillness. Seismographs across the globe began recording synchronized patterns. 13 pulses, always 13, then silence, then 13 again. Dr. Halvorsen, a geophysicist monitoring global anomaly data, was the first to connect the pattern. He described it in a classified report. This is not tectonic activity. It is coordinated movement. Something beneath the crust is responding to external stimuli. He was removed from the project 2 days later. His replacement never finished reading the file, because the next phase had already begun. The rising, not of water, not of land, but of entities. Far beneath the ocean below hell, chains that had remained still for longer than time itself began to shift, slowly at first, then violently. Each movement sent shock waves through the layered structure of containment built across existence. And for the first time since the monastery excavation began, the black ocean did not whisper, it screamed. Across the world, people began experiencing shared dreams. Entire populations reported seeing the same impossible image. A vast underwater expanse breaking apart, something rising through it, massive shapes emerging from darkness. Not one, not two, but many. The rising gods. Father Lucien's final fragmented notes, recovered after his disappearance, referenced this moment directly. He wrote, "The seals do not hold gods. They delay synchronization." At first, no one understood what that meant, until the ocean beneath hell began responding to surface activity. When earthquakes struck above ground, the chains below tightened. When human activity increased near excavation sites, the water beneath the earth became turbulent. It was reacting, as if aware, as if awake. And then came the first sighting. A satellite operated by an independent research group captured an anomaly in the Pacific Ocean. The image was unclear at first. A dark shape beneath the water, too large to measure. Then the image enhanced itself automatically. No operator input, no software command. It simply revealed more. And what appeared beneath the ocean defied all classification. A structure of living chains, wrapped around something vast, something that was moving, slowly, deliberately, waking. Within minutes, the satellite feed degraded, but not before transmitting a final frame. A single eye opening beneath the ocean floor, larger than continents, staring upward, directly into the camera. The feed ended. Within hours, global communication networks began failing in isolated regions. Not due to damage, but interference. Something was broadcasting, not signals. Presence. Every major monitoring station reported the same anomaly. A low-frequency resonance emerging from beneath the planet. It did not match any known natural phenomenon, but it matched something in the Vatican archives. A reference labeled only as the awakening frequency. No explanation, no context, only a warning. When the resonance begins, the 13 remember each other. Then the oceans changed, globally. Sea levels did not rise. They shifted, as if the water itself was being pulled toward a single hidden point beneath reality. Ships reported compass failure. Navigation systems stopped functioning entirely. And deep underwater exploration drones began returning corrupted footage. Scenes of massive shapes moving in impossible coordination. Chains stretching across abyssal plains. Structures that did not belong to Earth geometry. And something else. Voices. Not human, but familiar. As if they had been heard before by something deep in human memory. Dr. Halvorsen, before his disappearance, sent a final encrypted message to his colleagues. It contained only one line. They are not escaping. They are aligning. After that message, his location went dark. No trace was ever found. Then came the incident beneath the Arctic monitoring station. A facility built to track subterranean activity detected a sudden collapse in ice layers thousands of meters below the surface. But instead of collapse, the sensors recorded upward motion. Something rising through frozen earth. Not melting, not breaking, ascending. At the same time, seismic networks worldwide detected synchronized vertical pressure spikes, as if multiple colossal entities were moving upward simultaneously. From beneath oceans, from beneath continents, from beneath everything. And then the Vatican broke silence. A single encrypted broadcast was released to restricted government channels. It contained only audio, No origin, no timestamp, just sound. At first static, then breathing, then voices. Many voices speaking in perfect synchronization. We remember the chains. The message repeated, again and again, each time louder, closer, until the final transmission ended with something impossible. Not a voice, but laughter. The ancient, coming from beneath the ocean of the world itself. After that moment, global monitoring systems began failing entirely. Not breaking, not shutting down, becoming irrelevant, because something underneath the earth had finally reached a state of coherence. The rising gods were no longer awakening. They were arriving. And as the last functioning satellite captured Earth from orbit, it recorded one final image before destruction. The planet was no longer round. It was fractured, cracked like a shell under pressure from within. And beneath every crack, light. Not sunlight, not fire. Something else. Something watching. Then the final frame showed the oceans moving upward, against gravity, toward the sky. And within the rising darkness beneath them, something opened its eyes. All of them, at once. There are names that destroy meaning when spoken. Not because they are forbidden, but because they were never meant to exist inside language. The Vatican discovered this too late. By the time the final events began, language itself had started to fail. Words no longer held consistent meaning in the lower regions of the world. Texts rewritten themselves after being read. Audio recordings changed depending on who listened. Even memory became unstable. And at the center of all of it, the 13th God began to arrive. Not awaken, not rise, arrive. Because according to the oldest fragment recovered beneath the monastery, the 13th was never imprisoned like the others. It was excluded, removed from the count itself. Not bound beneath hell, not chained beneath the ocean, not sealed within reality. It was placed outside definition, a god that existed in the space between recognition and denial. And now, that space was collapsing. The first sign was silence, not the absence of sound, the absence of interpretation. People began hearing voices but could not understand whether they were real or imagined. They saw movement but could not determine if anything was moving. Reality stopped confirming itself. Then came the fracture. Across all global monitoring stations, a new anomaly appeared, a 13th resonance. Every system that had previously recorded 13 pulses from beneath the earth now detected a 14th signal. But it did not repeat. It did not stabilize. It erased the systems attempting to measure it. Dr. Halvorson's final recovered data fragment contained only one corrupted line. The first 12 were locks. The 13th is the reason locks exist. After that entry, his entire research archive disappeared from existence. Not deleted, not destroyed, as if it had never been recorded at all. At the same time, the ocean beneath hell stopped moving entirely. The chains beneath the abyss ceased vibrating. Even the rising gods fell into stillness. Not calm, not rest, absolute suspension. As if something had entered the system that made all previous motion irrelevant. Then came the dreams. But not shared dreams. Shared absence. Millions of people reported waking up unable to remember what they had been dreaming. Only a feeling remained. A sense of being observed by something that had no direction. No body. No presence. Only awareness. Father Lucien's final reconstructed note, recovered from fragmented digital residue, described it as not a being, not a force, but the collapse of distinction itself. The Vatican attempted one final containment protocol, codename Echo Null. The objective was simple in theory. Erase all remaining data connected to the monastery, the ocean beneath hell, and the rising gods. Erase the memory pathways. Erase the symbols. Erase the idea that any of it had ever been discovered. But the protocol failed before activation, because the system detected an interference. A presence already embedded within every database, every archive, every thought attempting to initiate deletion. And the system returned a single response. You are trying to remove what has no location. Then everything stopped. Not shut down. Not crashed. Stopped. As if reality itself had paused to evaluate the attempt. The final chamber beneath the monastery, now existing simultaneously above and below all known spatial references, began to open again. But this time, there was no seal. No structure. No threshold, only recognition. Witnesses from multiple surviving observation points described the same impossible phenomenon, a shape forming where space should have ended. But it was not entering reality. Reality was forming around it, slowly, incorrectly, like a thought trying to become physical and failing. Then the voices returned, but not from below, not from above, from within observation itself. Every recording device across the world captured the same message simultaneously. No transmission source, no origin point, just awareness. We were never the ones contained. At that moment, all remaining celestial and subterranean anomalies aligned for the first time. The watcher beneath shadows, the mouth beneath hunger, the rising gods beneath the ocean. All of them became still, not silenced, acknowledged, because something older had finally arrived. The 13th God was not a ruler, not a destroyer, not even a presence in the conventional sense. It was the condition that made presence possible, and impossible at the same time. Dr. Halvorson's final unsent transmission, recovered from a corrupted satellite relay, contained only one coherent sentence before deletion. It is not entering our world. Our world is becoming incapable of excluding it. After that message, all global systems lost synchronization permanently. Timekeeping devices failed first, then navigation, then language, then thought consistency, and finally, identity itself began to fragment. People began forgetting not names or faces, but the concept of being someone. Hospitals reported patients staring at their own hands as if unfamiliar with the idea of ownership. Soldiers abandoned their posts after being unable to confirm whether orders were being given or imagined. Entire cities fell into silent observation. No panic, no chaos, only uncertainty without anchor. Then came the final observation from the last functioning orbital satellite. It captured Earth from a distance that should have been safe, but safety no longer applied. The planet was no longer fully defined. Parts of it were missing, not destroyed, not obscured, unconfirmed. And above it all, something vast was forming, not descending, not rising, becoming. The final image transmitted before total system failure showed a structure impossible to interpret, because it did not resemble anything. It resembled the absence of expectation itself, and at its center, there was no face, no body, no shape, only the certainty that something was finally aware it had been observed. Then the last message ever recorded across all systems appeared simultaneously, not spoken, not written, not transmitted, understood by everything at once. The 13th God was never coming. It was already here. After that moment, there was no record of what happened next, because there was no system left to record it, and no observer left to understand what recording meant.